All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. Sorry, gotta give that delay there for there. So great. Okay, we're gonna move on to item 4, which is approval of the consent agenda items. May I have a motion for approval?
I move approval of the consent agenda items.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion of any of the consent agenda items?
I have a question.
Director Baker.
Yeah, and I apologize. I'm on my iPad and there doesn't seem to be a little hand raise thing, so I'll just blurt it out.
Okay.
So my question's on the HR report. Actually, I have 2 questions. So the first one is on the second page of the report. It looks at our hiring, our faculty hiring. And I raised this question before, and I'm curious, part-time faculty is a pathway to full-time faculty. We're working hard to diversify our faculty, and yet our part-time faculty hires are almost 80% white. And so and I understand, a lot of times certain occupations in particular, skilled trades or something can be very difficult to look for a diverse pool of candidates. But I would like a comment on that from the administration. Do you want me to, should I do my second question right now or do that first?
Let's do that one first so we don't lose sight of it.
Okay.
That is, can you hear me okay? Okay, that is an issue that we continue to have, certainly. Our candidate pools are not very diverse for faculty. We have made an offer to a new talent acquisition partner, two talent acquisition partners, and we have one more position out there to fill. And the reason why I bring that up is because what we want to do is be really intentional in our sourcing for passive job seekers in certain industries so that we're able to invite them to apply versus kind of having this wait and pray or sit and get model that we've had. So I think we really need to focus first on getting fully staffed before we can try and implement any strategies long term.
Would you like me to ask my second question?
I was gonna, I just want to, the delay, I never know, I don't want to interrupt. So did that answer your question, Director Baker?
Yeah, and I appreciate the efforts. I think we're responsible as the board to keep an eye on this and track it to see improvement in this area. So I appreciate the efforts we're taking, and I'd like to see reporting back on it as we proceed. Thank you. The second part of the HR agenda that's kind of stood out to me is on separations. And I always anticipate a lot of separations, especially over the summer. But we had 28 people who were resignations. These are not retirements, but were resignations. It seemed like a high number. Could the administration comment on, I mean, perhaps it's normal in summer, but it does seem kind of high, and maybe we could get a comment on that. Thank you.
So our turnover rate is actually lower for fiscal year 21-22 than the previous fiscal year, surprisingly, but we have started to collect exit survey information from employees. I can't say that we have a huge population of employees who are responding to it because it's voluntary, but the feedback that we have so far is that the #1 reason that people are leaving, I think that was over 30% of the responses, was because of better career opportunities. So top 5, I think that was the #1. And then outside of that was challenges with management. And that question was broken down from whether it was with their immediate supervisor, their divisional lead, or vice president. And then a third was maybe culture. I think that might have been the third. I don't have them in order, but I can get that information for you. That information just came out about a month ago.
Thank you. I think the board would probably appreciate seeing that. And I think we all want MATC to be the better job that people leave other places and go to. And so I find that distressing that people have better career opportunities than being here. And so I think getting more information like a deeper dive into that will certainly help us. Thanks.
Any other questions from any other board members on any of the consent agenda items? If not, we had a motion by Director Foley and a second by Director Diaz to approve all of the consent agenda items. All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we are ready to move on to board action items. And the first one is Resolution F0241-08-22, authorizing the sale of 22.5 million general obligation promissory notes, Series 2022-23C of the Milwaukee Area Technical College. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. And Mr. Meehan is with us again.
Yes, good afternoon. I've put at your places a brief handout if I can walk through. The Series C issue, the 22.5, is the largest of the issues that you will do during the fiscal year. It's a component which is 21 million of equipment and 1.5 million remodeling. As a reminder, you're limited to borrowing 1.5 million per meeting per month towards remodeling. And so we always put one in here with the equipment, make it more efficient. Well, at 22.5 million, you're also going to get more eyes on it, more attention to it. So if you looked at last month's sale, we had 3 bidders, okay? Today's sale, we have 7. We actually have 7 bidders whose names, none of the 7 bid last month. Okay, they're all familiar names to me, but only they may not be here next month. Okay, it really goes to the size of the issue. The rating is without question important. The structuring is important. We always have a first principal payment on December 1, which is attractive to bidders. You know that right away there's some money coming in. But it's really a combination of those will get the additional bidders. The winner on this one is Piper Sandler at a 2.34. As I've said in the past, we've seen some run up in rates. And so these rates are higher than they were last month. Now the structuring has a little bit to do with that, you know, the size and where the maturities are, but really it's a run up in rates that we're seeing. But it's still 2.34%. You know, it's still very inexpensive money for users. As I mentioned last month, the winner was Fidelity. They're not on the page this month. Maybe they had other issues they're bidding on. Hopefully they come next month. We welcome them, of course. And then Fifth Third Securities was second, or what we call the cover bid. We run the math of each to confirm their bid was accurate as to winner, and also to confirm the cover was accurate. Never happens, but it does happen that you can find some where someone made a mistake. Really odd one, not ours, last month. I think Baird bid and came in 7th and won because the top 6 had faulty bids, didn't bid according to the specifications. So you always check to see. That's not the case in your issues. We haven't had that problem. On my handout on page 3, I just list the details. The 22.5 million was dated September 14th. That means that's when the funds are received by the district and the interest clock starts. As I mentioned, we have a principal payment up front on December 1. Otherwise, the principal payments on June 1st match all your other principal payments. Interest begins this December. Part of the reason we use it December 1 is because all your debt is paid on a calendar year basis. So that factors into the funds available. And if you get into November, you take a look at your next setting the levy and other revenues, et cetera, for structuring purposes. But that's why we always have a December 1 payment to use up that levy money that's there in the debt service account. These are non-callable because they are such a short amortization. The AA1 is confirmed. And as I mentioned, Piper Sandler is the winner on the next page, page 4. We just show how this factors into all the issues. We're on track, nothing surprising. It's only the 3rd issue. The next issue, which you'll be considering the initial resolution for tonight, will be sold at your September board meeting. So that continues to be on track. As far as the credit report to the back, it's the same language. Nothing has changed from the last credit report. Part of that is there is nothing new to say. Okay, when we get a few months from now, your audit will be available. When your audit is available, that'll be a dialogue. That may change on the language, it may not. But right now, there's no reason for them to change the language over a 30-day issue. What I've just covered has all been included in the resolution prepared by your bond counsel, which is on your agenda tonight. Madam Chair, I'll be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Are there any questions for Mr. Meehan? Yes.
Okay, so for those of us who are new, can you, so there's 1.5 million per meeting that we can accept. Is this, are we accepting cash or is this bonding?
This is bonding, and what happens is that when we say 1.5 million, that's part of your financing plan for the year. And by statute, district school, the technical colleges are limited to 1.5 per meeting, and this is one of those. And the 21 million is part of the overall equipment borrowing. And it's a bond that's being sold, and the funds, the cash is transferred on the 15th.
Okay. And does it say in here where the relationship between us bonding and then receiving or having to pay that back?
Yes, there is an amortization. It's in the resolution itself, but on mine, it's on page, I'm sorry for the small type, it's on page 4, the landscape style page. And it's the third issue in from left to right. It says final, in real small type, so none of us can read it. Final $22.5 million. And then it shows the amortization, how much is paid each year on a calendar year basis. And I make an issue of the calendar year basis because all your operations are on a fiscal year, July 1 through June 30, as our school districts. But in Wisconsin for debt, it's always on a calendar year basis. And I would say also that the backup for this has been provided to the district. You know, the into the weeds, kind of what is paid every 6 months, et cetera.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
That's all I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure. Anybody else with other questions for Mr. Meehan? Okay, hearing none, we had a motion by Director Foley and a second by Director Mendoza Ramos to approve the resolution F0241-08-22, which authorizes the sale of 22.5 million general obligation promissory notes, Series 2022-2023C. We will need to have a roll call vote on this. So Gwen, could you please do that?
Director Burrs,
Here.
Director Case, Director Diaz.
Aye.
Director Foley,
Yes.
Director Mendoza Ramos.
Aye.
Director Mays,
Aye.
Director Moore Umakundu.
Aye.
Director Baker
Aye.
and Director Olson.
Aye. Thank you. And the next resolution, which allows us to issue to go out to market, is resolution F0242-08-22, authorizing the issuance of 1.5 million general obligation promissory notes, Series 2022-2023D of the Milwaukee Area Technical College. Do I have a motion? Motion to approve. Thank you. Second?
A second.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions on that? Okay, seeing or hearing none, we had a motion by Director Mays and a second by Director Diaz for resolution F0242-08-22 that authorized the issuance of $1.5 million general obligation promissory notes. Gwen, could you please take a roll call vote?
Director Case, Director Diaz.
Aye.
Director Foley,
Aye.
Director Mendoza Ramos,
Aye.
Director Mays,
Aye.
Director Moore Umakundu.
Aye.
Director Baker,
Aye.
Director Burrs,
Aye.
and Director Olson.
Aye.
Thank you
Mr.
very much.
Meehan. Item 5C is the president's goal for fiscal year 22-23, and they are in front of you as a printout. So can I have a motion to approve the goals?
I'll move to approve the goals.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. Discussion. Yes,
I could say,
Dr. Martin,
could say a
please.
couple words
Yeah.
ahead of time. So as you see, these are in alignment with our strategic plan, and you may recall you all got a little card like this, which lists all of our objectives. And so we could try to put in just the action items that we thought were of particular interest of the board and focus that you've had in the past. But all objectives that are listed on the plan will be aligned and cascaded through our organization through performance plans and other methods. And as a reminder too, these are the goals that during my review in January and in May will be considered with additional data. So I just wanted to remind you of the process of this. I welcome any questions or comments if you have them.
Director Foley.
Some questions for clarity. In the strategic priority 1, you state the objective, the annual goal is to improve 3-year graduation and transfer rates. And it's the next clause that I'm asking about, by tracking the leading metric for increasing course success rate from 67% to 72%. What is that metric?
We try to do a leading indicator because to wait for a 3-year graduation transfer rates would take too long. So what we look at instead is how are students doing in their courses? Are they succeeding in their courses? And if they're doing that, the chances of them completing obviously greatly increase, and they then can meet their career goals. So we kept the number, the metric that we had previously, so the 5% increase, but we really want to make sure that students stay on track, are retained, stay in their courses, and we think that this is one of the key leading indicators of that particular objective.
Okay, so each time you refer to a leading metric, you're talking about a leading indicator of future performance.
Right, versus
Okay.
lagging is the 3-year.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Were there other questions, Director Foley?
Probably, but give me a moment.
Okay, I don't want to interrupt you. Were there other questions from other board members? Director Foley.
Okay, again, I'm just trying to understand what the metrics are that are referred to here. Under strategic priority 2, annual goal 3, it says improve leadership, accountability, etc., particularly through implementing strategies from the Leadership Development Institute as measured by a project plan, alignment with employee performance plans, and monitored by pulse surveys based on PACE questions and results. Could you explain to us what all of those capitalized terms mean?
Let's start with PACE results, which PACE is really referring to an employee climate survey that we usually send out every 2 years, but we had to skip the COVID year because we thought that probably wasn't a good time to do that. And what it indicated is that we do need to improve in these particular areas. In fact, these are the areas, leadership, accountability, and so forth, that are listed under their institutional structure. And they've been a long-term issue for the institution. I found an old PACE survey from 1999 that showed these same sorts of things needed to be dealt with. And so I think it's really time. It's some of these things are also captured under our Leadership Development Institute, our Leadership Academy. So what we're going to do is we each have to come up with an individualized plan. We also come up with collective plans, looking at culture and systems and processes. It will be aligned with our performance plan. So we'll all have an item under our performance plan with what we agreed to as part of that institutional development that we're going through for leadership. We're going to also, because again, pulse surveys will help us to see if we're making any progress instead of waiting for the next 2 years to determine if we're making any progress. We want to make sure that we're doing the right kinds of strategies and the pulse survey will help us. And the pulse survey will send out to the different folks in our college and say, how are we doing on these particular things, which will be based on those same PACE questions that they had. But at least we'll have some sense of if we're moving forward or not. The other thing is that we'll have the leaders from the Mitchell Group prepare a report as well to let you all know how we're doing around January, probably around the midterm part. So they can share that with you as well. So it's a lot in here, but this is really about the culture piece and improving decision-making in particular, and making sure that we are building that culture of innovation. Because I know that's a lot. There's a lot in here. There's a lot packed in here, but that's what it measures from the piece. And so we wanted to make sure that we had it listed in this particular goal.
Thank you.
I'm gonna follow up on that just because I had a question under goals 3 and 4. It looks like the rest of the goals have a metric included in them and this one does not. And so there was a lot of words, but there wasn't an actual metric other than the word improve. And so I'm just wondering, as we revisited in January and then in June, what is an expectation and which of these, I mean, is it ultimately the PACE survey that would have the metric with it, or which of these? Because it looks like some of these are plans. So I guess what?
Well, there'll be a feedback from the Mitchell Group. There'll be pulse survey results.
Okay.
We just don't have that aligned yet, what we're going to do. And then with goal 4, we haven't decided yet exactly what milestones will be, but we're going to have to identify what those milestones will be along the way and whether we've met them or not, as well as looking at the project plan. So we'll have the plan and then we'll make sure we have the milestones. Do we meet those? Yes or no? So that's how we're going to do that one. We just don't have it developed just yet. We just put these together and that'll be part of what we need to develop as we go forward.
Okay.
Chair Olson, may I?
Yes, you may, Director Baker.
So you actually pointed out one of the things I was just going to raise, and I think this is true a lot of times when you look at a document like this. Over the course of next year, the devil's in the details, and you know, a lot of these. I appreciate, President Martin, your and I know it can be a struggle, you know, putting in achievable goals and making sure that we have actual metrics that we can track, and it's, you know, it's difficult. Certainly in something like organizational excellence, but I appreciate that this part of it is going to be a work in progress, because I had the same reaction that both improve and optimize were, you know, kind of mushy. Like, so I think we'll look forward to seeing more detail on that as we move forward, correct? I think I lost you guys.
I can hear you, Director Baker.
Hi, Rami,
Hi. I also have no sound.
but I can't hear them.
Same.
You know, this is Mohammed. I'll let him know. I can hear you too, but I think we lost him. So I'll let Beth know.
Thanks, Mohammed.
Sure.
Can any of you guys hear them yet?
No, and there is no response from Beth
Oh,
either. Yeah, let me try to see what I can do here. Just
Okay, I'm just gonna say my comments, just like just like blew the circuits, huh?
I listen to you. All right, let me try one more time here.
Sure. Rami, are you still here too?
Director Baker, I'm still here. I tried many people here, Beth, Tony, IT. So let me see how far I can get with this one here.
Okay, so we're all
We can't
together.
hear. We just got disconnected. So, yep.
Okay, but so it's not me individually, it's.
No, it's not
the
you.
college. Okay,
No, it's a college. It's a network here. So
okay, thanks.
thanks. Yep. Sorry about this.
It's okay.
Director Baker, just to let you know, IT is looking into it. So they're working on it right now. This is, I hope they have an IT person in the boardroom. That's why he's telling me. So,
You're on mute, Director Baker. Mute.
oh, hi, Rainey. Yeah.
Hi, I've been quiet because I wasn't sure if everyone else.
No, that's all right.
Just
Sorry
a
about
small
this.
group of
Yeah.
5.
VP of IT is with me on instant messaging here. He's trying to kind of fix it on the other end. So we'll see.
Okay. It wouldn't do any good for us just to go and re-sign in or something,
That's what I did. I just,
and that it didn't do it.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm in
You-
Minneapolis, so whatever.
I can give you the legislative update.
Oh, cool. Actually, I'm probably the most interested in it too, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. So I could do that. So at least someone gets it just in case.
No, it's kind of embarrassing to be like part of like this very advanced technology institution and then something like this happens.
So, yeah.
Ah, well,
Yeah.
at least they know we're out here.
Okay, Rainey and Director Baker, I'm gonna walk over. So let me see. I'm in my office, but I'm walking over. So if you lose me for 5 minutes or so, I'm just gonna try to connect with them.
Okay.
Okay.
So maybe I wait.
Yeah, no, I was looking at.
Right? I know. I made a comment before. I'm like, we actually done by this time. I'm like, hey, we're actually at home.
Especially when we approved the 3.
I think we should celebrate the fact that Director Baker has been reanimated.
Yes.
Okay, I don't know, I really didn't do that on purpose.
Oh, you.
I think if any of us could pick the frozen face that we would have, I think we would do a little bit more prep on that.
Ooh, don't show me, I don't want to know.
Are we back and good to go then, Beth? Okay. So Director Baker, we had just moved on to, I gotta get to my other agenda. I got like 3 screens up here. The policy approval, which is item 6A, we had a motion to approve in a second, and then I asked for discussion, and that's when we realized that we were not attached to everybody else. So we had not yet started discussing that item, so you did not miss any discussion on that item. So there's lots of red and cross out and strike through. We had lots of conversations on this. And I think as you can see, as we talked about last time, this policy was originally adopted in 1984. And the last time that it was revisited was 2007. So clearly, as we've talked about the need for that, there is a need to sort of revisit that. So we did have a discussion back in June. So we're all having to try to remember back in June when we had that discussion. So now that we're all sort of back into the, oh yeah, this policy, are there any questions, comments, or anything related to this policy?
I just have one question.
Yes, Director Baker.
Yeah, so we did see this in June for review. Were there changes between then and now?
Listen.
Good afternoon, Chair Olson, members of the board. Thank you, Director Baker. No, there were not any additional changes that were made. And I'm happy to go through a couple of the highlights if you'd like, because I know Director Omokunde and Director Burris weren't on the board at the time.
We were listening.
Yeah, I was gonna say you were
Except
present
for
there,
the
yeah.
close, except for the closed session, you know that.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you wanna, I don't, I'm not, it's not mine, I'm sorry.
No, it's yours. Would, yeah, I guess like, that is the question. Would it be helpful for you to
Sure.
sort of highlight and go through and review that where we were? Okay, Kristen,
Sure.
could you please do that and just sort of highlight that?
So as Chair Olson said, the last time we revisited this policy was in 2007. So just some high level changes. As you can see, we've redlined it. In the second paragraph, you'll see that there's a specific reference to the board focusing on high level strategy and oversight. Secondly, if you go down to the third paragraph, there is now a specific statement that no individual will be able to commit the board on a specific position without a majority vote of the district board. And again, that's a specific position. And then if you scroll down, I've got a couple of copies of this, so bear with me. To the last paragraph, there is a statement about the board's responsibilities regarding being stewards of public trust, and sets forth that the district board will work with the chairperson and the president to appropriately address any inquiries that are made from a member of the public, from an employee, or from a student. And then we have also created a policy, or excuse me, a procedure that talks about how to address those concerns, and we've created some templates for the board to use. So those are the high level changes in this policy.
Director Foley?
One minor comment, the new sentence, no individual may speak for or commit the district should be capitalized.
Thank you.
Just for a point of clarification for me, Kristen, the attached procedure, when we make the motion, we are actually just approving the policy portion of it. The procedure is just more of a reference within that as that may update. correct?
So the board approves policies and then procedures, we, the administration implements.
Yeah, okay, just wanted to be clear, just because it's attached for us, so, yep.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
how black and white is this statement, no individual, starting with no individual, ending with vote of the district board? Because I'm certain that there will come a point where individual board members may disagree or have opposition with something that the board has decided. And I think we alluded to this.
we
before.
did, right.
How black and white is that statement? Or is there any gray area where an individual is allowed to discuss? I'm bringing up old stuff, that's what I'm doing. So how black and white is that?
Well, it's policy, and so if it's in policy, I mean, it's not a state statute, but it is policy, and so it would be, and I think part of our retreat in July was to sort of take us through some of those examples and work through when this would be and how the potential for that could be, and how to work around it. I think our facilitator at that time was trying to actually give us some examples on how to do the workaround. So I guess from that standpoint, I would say that, you know, policy is policy. And then there are steps around, you know, I would say violations. I think there was always that we had to talk about, like, is there a conflict of interest with something, or just sort of having that piece about it. And that you know, that would come up, like, if you feel like you could always recuse yourself from a vote or something like that, if there was going to be that direct conflict. But I think it was sort of like getting to a place of consensus, is that the board is a collective entity and that no individual has that, you know, and so all of the conversation happens here. So your dissension or your whatever, and then once the vote is taken, we collectively agree to sort of follow that. And so, and that's where we had talked about if there was a reporter or something who had called, because we have recordings now of this, you can reference the board meeting and they can listen to the discussion here live. You don't have to worry about paraphrasing. You don't have to worry about putting words in somebody else's mouth. And so I think it was really like, if a board member has to say, like, you know, they may be that you can speak it at this table in the discussion part of it. And that really gives you that opportunity to have voice without afterwards having to sort of do that. Does that sort of help with that, or?
Sure.
Madam Chair, may I?
Sure, Director Baker.
Yeah, sure. And I think Director Moran-Makundi, the last two paragraphs here, I think kind of speak, I see them as speaking to your concern, because membership of the district board does not mean that you no longer have the right to speak or act. But, you know, if the board decides something and it is just a terrible decision, things like that happen, never to this nice group of people in front of us, but things like that happen in the course of our lives. And people have spoken out individually and say, well, I'm not representing the board, but, and I believe that that's what that paragraph states. And the paragraph after that also says that you're a public official and you're going to have people reaching out to you with issues of concern. And so, you know, there is the ability for you to act as an individual while also respecting the actions of the group, the decisions of the group, and your membership in it.
Yes, thank you. I'm mostly concerned about de jure and de facto, because I could say I am not speaking on behalf of the board, and I may say something that will where I would be de facto speaking on behalf of the board, even though I said I wasn't. And someone may hear that and run with it and say, oh, well, I spoke to somebody from the MATC board and this is how they felt. They may be saying one individual or the plural they, but this is, they may still interpret it as the position of the board, even though and then I'll just say, well, I was speaking on my own behalf. I'm just concerned about, when I talk about black and white, I'm talking about the gray areas of.
Fully get that. And I think talking with lots of different legal counsel on this and whatever, it is the number one concern is that anybody through that de facto thing is like, can you truly ever separate yourself from that role, even if you put this disclaimer in front of it? Because as we know, when it gets reported, all of that just goes away and it's maybe sensationalizing that piece of it. So I guess at that point, and somebody from legal counsel, please speak up, it's really that like intentionality of it. If you did your due diligence to separate that out as compared to like intentionally saying that, like if you did all you could, you can't control what that other party did. And if you have that piece of it, so please someone from legal counsel speak on that.
Thank you, Charleston. And to your point, that is why we have included the language about being mindful of our position, your position as stewards of the public trust. And so to be very mindful when you speak and how you're speaking, the perception, you can't control somebody else's perception. You can't control how something is reported in any media outlet, whether it be written media. But that's also why we created the template. So when you're issuing a written response, that you have something to use. And I know those have already been distributed, and I believe they've been used a couple of times as well. So I think it's just to Chair Olson's point, the intentionality of how we speak and how we represent and hold ourselves out when we're in the community. So I know everyone here is very, very active in the community.
Thank you.
Good question.
My question.
Sure. Yeah.
So I believe you said that we're not grounded to use the templates, or are we?
You mean in responses?
Yes, like so for inquiries, are we grounded to use these templates? And I know that it also says that the board does not have a direct role in review. Do we get follow-up from inquiries that are made to us that we forward to the chair or to the president's office?
I would say for the most part, that is the intent of that. Should that be something confidential in a personnel matter, like that, it would still vet through that piece of it. But for that most part, that follow-up would come from that. Yes. Yep.
I don't know if I'm understanding.
Maybe we can take an example. So if somebody contacted you and then you said, here's my response. In fact, I had this situation this week where a director had gotten a direct inquiry and then forwarded on to Dr. Martin or myself. And that plan was that it was going to be communicated and then to that employee, but then we're anticipating follow-up from that, even if like we can't get all the details because it was a personnel situation. Like we met with this employee, there's a next step or there's another meeting. Like that might be all we get because we can't get the details. There might be some other situations in which it's not a personnel thing. It could be like, hey, the steps are, broken on the Oak Creek campus. Like, what can we do about that? And that might be something they're like, hey, here's our plan for that. They're going to get fixed next week or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, good. I was hoping.
If I may, the template language was designed to make it easier for you to respond without having to know the legal niceties that are involved. So there are many things that we can't discuss.
Mm-hmm.
There are many things that we can discuss. And so this basically says that's the situation. And I will be monitoring it. You mentioned that you had one this last week. That was me, and I got a response to this. I got a response to this language from the person who sent me the email that said, "Thank you. That's all I wanted." Okay, so great. You might get a different response. But that was the intent of this, and I think Kristen, you worked on this language, as did Janice. It's hard sometimes not to want to jump right in and say, "Oh, that sounds terrible," blah 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 blah. But that is exactly the kind of off-the-cuff reaction that could come back to haunt you and us as a group later on. Because you don't know the facts. Even if they've laid out the facts as they understand them, you don't know what you don't know. I would just like to add on the other discussion. that the statement, no individual may speak for or commit the district, is the point of that language. You can't say speaking for the board, comma, okay, or I'm sure everyone on the board would agree, comma. That's what this is designed to say. You really can't do that because you don't have any authority individually to speak for the district or the board. Even the chairman doesn't, with some limitations. And I don't know if this institution has ever gotten in trouble about this before, but this is designed to prevent it from happening. So what you were saying before was, if I make it clear that I'm speaking for me, you've satisfied that. Okay. If somebody misinterprets that or decides to intentionally misinterpret that, that's not on you. Again, somebody could follow up by saying, well, are you speaking for the whole board? And if you say no, but shake your head yes, that's a problem. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
One more follow-up.
Director Baker.
I'm not, again, this is, someone pointed out, this is a policy. It's obviously not law. And in my history at MATC, there have been board members who have said that they were speaking for the board when they were not speaking for the board. You cannot protect against all situations. But I do think that this is meant to help define our role and allow us, when we are all in good intent, to know where the parameters are. It can't stop every bad thing from happening, though.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
Yep, agreed. So good conversation on that. I think the clarity of understanding that is really important to sort of understand all of this. So this is good conversation. We'll continue a lot of that. Other questions, comments before we take a vote on it? Okay, we did have a motion to approve by Director Mendieta Ramos and a second by Director Foley, for which is policy A010, the authorization to represent the district board. All those in favor of approval, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We are moving on to, and we're back on schedule for that, the report section. You think I had a really important thing to get to or something, I know. So first is the Chairpersons Report. So first of all, on behalf of the MATC District Board, I would like to welcome all of our students back for the fall semester and our faculty and staff. So welcome back. It seems like we're already at that place again that we just left for summer break, and here we are again. So board committee assignments, which we talked about in July, have been made for the 22-23 year. And so here are the formally announced those here. People have been notified, but Director Case will continue to serve as the board liaison to the MATC Foundation. Director Baker will serve as the board representative to the MATC Legislative Task Force. And Director Mays, who is the board treasurer, will serve in the Audit Advisory Committee and the FCC Opeb Trust Committee. That sounds really fun.
It's fun.
I know that's great. See? So in addition to the MATC committees, the Wisconsin Technical College District Boards Association committee assignments are as follows. So Director Foley will continue to serve as the MATC representative to the association's board of directors. Director Foley will also serve on the bylaws committee, another fun committee. And then Director Case will serve on the external partnerships committee. So thank you to all of you for serving in those additional capacities to represent the college. Director Foley attended the Wisconsin District Boards Association meeting in July. So would you like to report to us?
Yes. The association is having a meeting this Saturday, which is an annual meeting, to establish goals for the year, including legislative goals. So there was some discussion about that at the previous meeting and where we should be going. The reason for being on the bylaws committee is that somebody who shall remain nameless mentioned the fact that the bylaws are self-contradictory, inconsistent, and generally incomprehensible. And so we are rewriting them. I should rephrase that. I am rewriting them and see if anybody agrees. Another important part of the discussion was how to make the boards association more valuable to the members. Technically, the members are the 16 technical colleges. And as you have just done with me, each appoints a person to be a member of the board of directors. There are a couple of colleges who are having doubts about whether they want to continue. It seems to be financially driven rather than anything else. And so I think there's a commitment to making particularly the board training materials more accessible and more valuable. And I'm going to start reviewing those. And if you give me the opportunity in the next board meetings, I thought I would talk about a couple of those that are out there each time and how to access them. The association also put on a program very much like our retreat program on what board members can do and cannot do, and how the board should function. That remarkably was best received by the colleges that seem to doubt that there is value there. So, well, you know, I told them we paid for what they just got for free. So I think the association needs to kind of reinvent itself. The membership has grown too old, which is true of the boards of most of the colleges because they're mostly retired people. And I would encourage any of you who have thoughts or just want to see thoughts about what the goals for the year should be, particularly legislatively, or who would simply like to see how the sausage is made. It's in Madison at the Concourse Hotel, beginning at 8 a.m. and any member of the board can attend. That's all I have.
Thank you. And I do think it would be interesting about the trainings, again, making relevance for that, and maybe share with us if there's some things that would be helpful. Give those your little Yelp ratings before you share them with us, and we know which ones.
Well, the other thing is, if there are things that you think you would like to have training on, tell me and I'll see. And there are a lot of things out on the website, and some of them are older than others and some of them are better than others. But if there's a particular topic, if you're raising the bonding issues, that any of you would like to learn more about, just tell me and I'll see what's out there and maybe help develop something that's better than what's out there.
Yeah, good, thank you. The last piece, and since we just approved our policy, we had talked about having a task force of board members who are willing to sort of dig into that. So I know that two directors said they were already having fun on committees, but if you aren't on an external committee and really liked the review that we just did, we have a lot more of our own policies that need review to look at. And so I think, you know, this one was 2007 and we already helped clarify that. And I think part of that, you know, doing this work allows you to really get in and understand the work of a board member too. So I think we all learned more just by like having to review this. So I'm going to send out, actually I'll best send out an email about anybody who is interested in serving in that task force to sort of work on that off to the side with Kristen, and then bring those forward in a timely basis, like which ones should we look at first. But they would be similar to the work that we did here, because there are a series of these that sort of govern the work of the board, and we do need to sort of look at those and review those to decide that way. It just sort of, it's a learning process too, so don't think of it just as like, oh, I'm rewriting board policies, because that may not be your thing, but I think you get to learn stuff as you're doing that about the roles and what can you do and things like that. So I'll have Beth send out that, and then we will follow up with the people who can start to work on that and sort of have some monthly updates on where we are and bring those forward to the board as a whole. And that's my report. And so next is the president's report.
Thank you, Chair Olson, board members, faculty, staff, community. I'd like to update you on a couple of things that have happened this past month. Yesterday, as you just heard, we welcomed students back to our campus. It was really great to walk the halls and talk to a few of the students. One student in particular stood out to me. He had been out with COVID in the last year, so he stopped out. He said learning virtually really wasn't for him. But he said, I just needed to come back because I missed coming to school. I missed learning, and I'm really excited to be here. He said, it's like a new campus. All the student pockets where they're studying and talking. And he just said, this is just so much more vibrant than when I remember it. And so he was pretty happy. We have a brand new open cafeteria. We had a lot of excited students sitting up there and enjoying the view. And the weather outside as well. So it's really a great week for us to have students back here. Last Monday, several of our staff helped students move into our Westtown Green apartments in the former Journal Sentinel building. That was another exciting event, having families and friends bring students into our new apartments. We've seen the demand really increase. We are approaching 95% occupancy rate. We had 189 spaces available. 12 spaces are reserved for emergency housing needs, and Dr. Gonzalez de Jesus had to help a couple students with that particular issue that day. And then the other 177 spaces are serving 171 students in studios, which is a 1-person, 2 bedrooms and 4-bedroom units. I want to thank the Student Life Office and their staff and all the volunteers who really help make movement special for these students. It's a very exciting time. Of course, it brought me back quite a few years to my time moving in the first time, which was exciting. Our grants department and our foundations teams have been working hard to secure additional resources to assist our students and help them overcome their financial barriers. The first one is veterans who want to come back to MATC, have some additional help now. It's our Credit for Prior Learning and Experience program is receiving a $50,000 grant from the Wisconsin Department of Safety and Professional Services, which will allow us to have a specialist to help the students who are veterans to really look at the credits that they've earned through their military experience. So we're pretty excited about that. And for the second year in a row, we've offered student grants for books, supplies, and equipment. The foundation awards approximately $100,000 per academic year. And these grants are offered on a first come, first served basis, thanks to Laura Bray and her staff for working on that. We are also now able to offer more DACA plus scholarships with a significant $100,000 gift from Van Horn Latino and a $12,000 donation from El Rey Grocery. This scholarship program benefits students who are typically unable to receive financial aid because of their immigration status. Thank you to Director Diaz for your leadership in this initiative, and for Monica Wallach, Director of Development, and her work to support this effort. Much appreciated by our students in the college. In addition, the heavy metal band Metallica created a workforce education initiative that provides direct support for skilled trade students while elevating the importance of career and technical education. We partner with the AACC, the American Association of Community Colleges. The Metallica Scholars Award was selected via competitive application, so not every college gets it. You have to apply and be selected. So I'm pleased to announce that MATC has received a $100,000 award, and scholarships will be provided based on students' financial needs up to $1,000 per student. Thank you to Carol Voss and the foundation for securing this particular scholarship. This is the big news. On Friday, August 19th, I had the pleasure of announcing the Ellen and Joe Dakota Scholarship Program. When fully funded, this will represent $7.5 million, the largest scholarship that we've ever offered in our 110-year history. And through the scholarship program, we can support qualified technical and certificate students to earn their credentials quickly because they have to take more credits, so we get them through more quickly. And then they can get out and get meaningful employment, which is really the goal. Employers are desperately seeking the skills that our students have. And so to attract and retain these students is really important. And we know from our data that the reason students tend to drop out are for all the reasons that this scholarship is going to support, which is besides tuition, They're gonna get all their books, fees covered, all the equipment that they need, childcare, food, housing at the Westtown Green, and transportation. So we're really hopeful. We already have 300 applications by students, so we're really excited. It's off to a good start. We're also seeking that match of 2.5 million, so that it gets to that 7.5. Want to thank our foundation board president, Julie Ebert, and her husband, Frank Daly, for the first match of 500,000. For every 500,000, we get $1 million. So we have 1.5 million to start the fall semester. We wanted to take our current students and continuing students and offer them this opportunity. So we're going to be working on raising the money. I want to thank Laura Bray and her team for launching this transformational scholarship. I think we have a video to show. Right? This is show. I think this is all the information about this.
Today is a especially historic day as we announce this new partnership that will transform lives and our local economy.
Through a remarkable $5 million investment from these generous donors, we are immediately launching the Dakota MATC Scholarship Program. This new scholarship will provide students in short-term programs with full ride scholarships.
We have for a long time, 25 years or more, wanted to be in a position where we could help trade and technical students better their lives. We're just very pleased that we're in a position to take a step in that direction, and we frankly encourage others in Milwaukee to contribute small gifts and large gifts so that we can spend that money we have pledged as fast as possible. Thank you.
Ellen and Joe's $5 million investment is contingent on gaining matching funds from other donors. Our MATC Foundation Board President, Julie Ebert, and her husband, Frank Daly, are with us here today. I am pleased to announce that Julie and Frank have committed $500,000 as the first 2-to-1 matching gift to support the Dakota MATC Scholarship Program. Julie and Frank's gift combined with Ellen and Joe's match means that we have $1.5 million available immediately to help our students.
When our board heard about this incredible gift from Ellen and Joe, I don't mean to cry, we were all in. We are completely committed to your vision and to the challenge you've given us to raise those matching funds. This is a full scholarship, so it takes down all the barriers that students have to completing their education.
When you start impacting a student who's walking through our doors today, you impact their children, you impact their children's children. And through this partnership, I hope that this can become something that is a legacy that lives here for many generations at MATC.
We want them to have a flight out to success, straight there. And this is going to get them there. This is that advocacy that we need as a college to get them there. Thank you so much for what you've done for the students. I appreciate it. I know they appreciate it. We all appreciate it. And God bless you.
Can we clap?
Yeah. Joe and Ella got a standing ovation. Frank and Julie got a standing ovation. We all had tears in our eyes. It was just tears of joy, of course. It was just a wonderful moment in the history of this college for our students. It's a game changer. It's a life changer. It's going to make such a difference in so many people's lives, as Laura said, for generations to come. It's pretty exciting. And so we're all hoping that and encouraging everybody to any amount to give towards this so that we can get up to that 500,000 so we can help our students to continue and bring in another cohort in January would be greatly appreciated. So
So thank you for that. And then finally, I would like to announce some recent leadership changes in my cabinet due to Janice leaving and Bodan, of course, will be leaving soon. Kristen Dakota, as you already have seen, will be our interim general counsel. Vice President Jeff Paulo will take on facilities and public safety as he had done once before. But he had also taken on IT, so now IT will now be with Dr. Christine Mannion, who will oversee information technology as well as internal audit functions. Laura Bray will pick up the legislative relations area for the college, and then the interim general manager of PBS is posted now for the interim, and then we will be doing a national search for a permanent position, for that position to be filled permanently. So with that, I conclude my report. Any questions? Let me know.
Can Director Baker hear us?
Okay. I was confused a bit too.
Thank you. I think the sound went down with the applause, but then it came back up. Appreciate it.
A few sirens too in the background to sort of add to that. So thanks for checking. So good. Thank you very much for that report. Next,
I
we
have
have
a question.
Oh, absolutely.
I wasn't sure whether or not.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So I read it in. Great job to you and your team. Great job. Like that is like an amazing effort. I read over it, and the only question I had was about the single parent students that have children. Is there going to be some type of stipend for housing for those families?
Not at this time. What we're hoping to do, we actually had those discussions.
Okay.
And we're starting with Westtown Green, which doesn't at this point have that, but we're looking to expand our own housing in that area so that students with children can have a place to stay. We're not there yet. And I think if they really wanted to keep it limited just to our Westtown Green facility at this point, but we're hoping as time goes on, that may change.
Okay. Director Warwick.
Yes, is there any space for Westtown Green to alter that policy at all? Or are they open to thinking about that? Or do they just not have the space? Or is it not economical for them to do so?
Yeah, well, it's not conducive, nor I think the way it's currently structured, we really can't have children there right now. But that's something that we have certainly talked to Josh Jeffers about for the future. But since we're leasing this right now, it's really intended for adults at this point. And if I've missed anything, Nadine or Chris, but I think that covers.
Thank you.
That,
One thing
why
I
we
would
can't.
add, I apologize. The one thing I would add is there are some federal regulations around how children can be housed in this type of facility because of the number of bedrooms and whatnot. So that's what we're working through.
It worked for Big Mama. We used to have be in certain rooms and sleeping bags.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thanks for those. Next to our diversity, equity, and inclusion report. So Eva Martinez-Callas, thank you.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I do have a very short update for you regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I am also very excited, similar to Dr. Martin and all over MATC community, to announce that the new Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion opened on Monday. So we are very excited to be able to offer that resource to our students and our employees. We are going to be working in the next 6 months to provide staffing for the office and ensure that we have the infrastructure that is needed to be able to provide resources to our students in particular. It is very exciting, particularly for multicultural and diverse student populations. I have a meeting coming up in particular with some of our multicultural organizations to be able to discuss some of the resources that we will be providing through the office. The office is housed here downtown, and we are also hoping to expand services to the other locations at MATC. So that's the exciting news that I wanted to share, and that's all I have for you as of today. So thank you. Any questions? Thanks.
I like the clapping today.
Yeah.
A lot of good news.
Yeah, it is. It's great to have an office for that, so that's exciting too. So, next is our enrollment reports with Dr. Nadine Gonzalez.
Madam Chair, thank you. I would like to have our Dean of Enrollment, Dr. Adams, and our VP of Stay and Retention, Jeff Jans, come forward. Thank you.
Well, good evening and welcome back to another school year. Welcome new board members. As Dr. Martin said, we're really happy to see students in our hallways. They seem very excited to be back, so we were really glad to see them. I also talked to one student and she expressed how hard it was for her doing it online, and she had never been to campus before. So she was really excited to be here and to see the spaces and just to be around other students and to see our faculty actually face to face. So we're really happy. I said, thank you for being here. We're really happy to see our students back. I know we sent a report to you that gave you the information that you requested that talked about our FTEs, and you go to the next slide, our FTEs and our enrollment. It gave you information that compared our fall 2020 to fall 22 and to fall 2023. So I know you've received that information and we've given you the percentage of change. What I wanted to, if you had any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer those questions. But what I wanted to share today was the difference between August 8th, which was the last information we provided you, and actually the information we received as of today. Today, on August 8th, we were at 2,778 FTEs for this school year. As of this morning, we're at 3,355 FTEs. So I wanted to. So as the old TV show says, we're moving on up. So we're really happy about that. We're at 85.99%, 9% of our fall goal, and we're at 49.1% of our total goal, which is 8,300 in FTEs for this academic year. So we need another 549 FTEs for this fall semester. We have begun our 15, 16-week courses. Our 12-week courses will begin the week of September 18th, and we've had a lot of enrollment this week. We still have students coming in and we're still working with them, continuing to get them enrolled in our 15 and 16-week classes, in addition to our 12-week classes. So we do expect to be going up a little further. So I didn't know if you had any questions about that. I just quickly wanted to talk about the trends that we had seen a little bit when we started to look at the data. When we looked at the information, our post-COVID FTEs and headcount for fall 2020, it is definitely higher than it is now. But as you notice, and when you look at the numbers, we are steadily going up. Last year, we were still in the midst of COVID for our fall 2021, but now as we hit this fall 2023, our numbers are going up. And in addition to our FTEs going up, of course, our head count is also going up. Around the state, we do understand that most of the colleges are kind of flat, or they're not seeing the amount of growth that we're seeing. And currently, a lot of the strategies that we're really putting in place that we're working on are strategies where we're really working on our student experience. We're really working on making sure our students understand why we're here, that they know that we're here to help them. We're walking them through things. We're really working with them so they would have a good experience when they come to the campus. And in addition to that, we're also working on quite a few retention strategies. And Dr. Jeff Jans is going to share some of those retention strategies with us.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I know you already saw my face, and if you had a chance to see the video, in some cases we had better luck than others in trying to get it to you. I'd like to talk a little bit about the highlights that we've derived from the reports that we've had and what the plans that we've got for our retention efforts. I'll start with just the basic foundation. It's a lot easier to talk about it than to make a video or to read a report. But essentially, we have spent the year looking at the kind of data that would be the easiest, fastest for us to use in our efforts in retention. So what we chose of all the metrics, we have fall to spring retention, spring to spring, spring to fall, but we get access to the fall to spring persistence efforts as quickly as possible. So what we have done is, with the help of our institutional researchers, Yan Wang in particular, we have created a dashboard that inputs all the different student IDs of users of all the different resources and services we have, along with members of cohorts of different sets of students. And we've compared the users to the non-users of those services and resources in terms of their persistence from fall to spring. And that gave us all the information that we gave to you in that brief video. I've learned a couple things from this whole process that I want to share on a broad brush. First, I don't like listening to my own voice on a recorder. I know that for sure from that point. We're already embarking on many of the retention strategies that we will be taking part in this fall, but the difference will be the organizational structure. We're going forward with what we're calling a retention cohort system. We've got over 25 invitations out for cohort champions of various groups of students. Cohorts are essentially, it's another term for various groups of students, student athletes, student employees, parents of who are students, and then the subsets of single parent families, as well as users of our childcare, and the list goes on. And what we're doing with those cohorts are asking each of them to create their own enrollment plan, and we're giving them recommendations on what kind of strategies they can use, but they're going to come up with their own. And we have a set of 8 or 9 leads for our resources who will be ready to assist them with those services for the students. The whole premise is we're showing success when students collaborate with each other and meet each other in some ways. Community colleges have great challenges with the student experience because so many of them come and go. But if we can gather them in groups and cohorts with individuals who they have something in common with. So if we have a financial literacy program, it's more likely they'll attend if their group is attending, or a tutorial program, or other kind of services that we'll provide. So that's the whole premise behind our plan this year. From a plan to check, adjust perspective, we're deeply into the do this year, and we've got a great team that's working with it. We work very closely with Eva and DEI to also embark on looking at the equity gap from the perspective of white users of services versus non-white users of services, and comparing them and contrasting them. So with that, I would ask if you have any questions from what you observed or anything that we're planning on.
I got a question. So from your report, I noticed that you specified using students and having the student government's involvement with making sure the student experience is good. So I guess my question was, have the student governments at the different campuses had any recent resolutions?
Oh, yeah, and we're not asking them to take part in the process. We're actually analyzing their experience as members of the student government itself to see if taking part, as with BSU, Latinx Unitas, and others, is a way for them to feel more connected in their overall student experience. They're not actually participating in the retention.
Okay.
Good question.
Dr. Foley?
First to comment, this is great. This is creative and it's persistent.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really great. One thing that occurs to me that I haven't heard that you're doing, and that is to identify those students who are not involved in some group and to make some sort of an outreach to get them involved, or to ask them what kind of a group they might be interested in joining, because this sounds like it's really important.
I do too. I'm glad you said that, because in all my years, I've never been part of something that makes more sense. It's just extremely logical. And in fact, one of my goals is to make this as equitable and easy for the staff members who are participating as possible, so that they can, instead of do more work, do work that is more in line with these specific cohorts. And to your question, we are planning on looking at sort of the null hypothesis to take all the names and student IDs of students who are in cohorts and look at the list of who's left. And that would be an additional outreach. So that's a very good point. Thank you.
Just making sure. Everybody, I'm not missing hands or anything. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Great work. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Next, we're moving on to the Milwaukee PBS General Manager's Report. Go Dan Zachary.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, Chair Olson, MATC board members, Dr. Martin. I'll begin this month's Milwaukee PBS report with a look at the financials. We're almost at the end of our August fundraising drive. And with 2 days left to go, we've raised $106,078 from 595 donors. This puts us at $82,000 toward our goal of $130,000. Just as I was arriving here, we got notified that a donor who loved watching us put us in her will. She passed away, and we got notified that we're going to get $120,000 in the next 3 months. So that's terrific news. As Dr. Martin said, on the operational front, there's a posting for interim GM internally, and a headhunting search firm will start looking for my successor. In the next week or two, we will be interviewing for our Chief of TV Engineering position, Brian MacArthur, who'd been here for 42 years, retired at the end of June. And so this is the next executive who will fill a very critical need at our station. I'll continue to lead the station until October 7th, which happens to be the night that Milwaukee PBS will air a live 1-hour debate between Senator Ron Johnson and Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes. The event is done in collaboration with the Wisconsin Broadcasters Association. Everything's moving ahead with no problems, and I'll give you any updates in next month's report. And that really concludes my report, my last in-person report for now, and happy to answer any questions you have.
Why are there no Emmys this month?
Because they don't get, it's the fall season. And there's another award, a season coming up with the National Educational Television Association, that conference that takes place at the end of September. So maybe in the next report, there will be some awards. I wish I had them every meeting, but I don't.
We did have an endowment announcement. That would be exciting.
really
So
nice.
like, hey.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next, Laura Brave will be presenting our legislative matters report.
Yes, actually, I'm going to turn it over to Rainey Zonkova, who's on Zoom.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you. The report will be brief this evening. You should have a document at your seats as well. Quickly, just to give a biennial budget update, I've included an ongoing column there. As I indicated in a prior report, agencies are in the process of compiling their budget requests for the governor, and they will submit those budget requests on September 15th. Revenue estimates continue to be very strong in the state of Wisconsin. Right now, estimates are projected at over $5 billion. Just today, actually, which is not included in my report, Governor Evers announced another tax cut plan that would cost around $600 million with a focus on caregiver tax credits, child and dependent care credits, among other provisions. And so we'll see, of course, if the legislature chooses to take that up. They are not compelled to do so, but the governor has announced that plan, which we should hear more about in the next few months. Because it's the legislative interim, as I've indicated, right now is a little bit more of a quiet time. On the legislative front, there are 2 legislative study committees that we are monitoring and participating in. First, the study committee on increasing offender employment opportunities. We have one of our very own, Dr. Isahaku, serving on that committee. When I compiled the report, a meeting date had not been scheduled for that initial meeting, but now, of course, it has been scheduled, and that first meeting will occur on August 30th. And we expect probably 4 or 5 or 6 meetings on the topic throughout the year. The initial meeting will focus on just kind of briefing committee members on the process, and then receiving reports from the Department of Corrections. The technical college system will also be presenting, as well as the Department of Workforce and Development. So we will participate and support Dr. Isahaku in his work on that committee as it progresses for the remainder of the year, under the assumption that at some point legislative proposals should be drafted and forwarded to the legislature for consideration next session. And then the other committee, Legislative Study Committee, which one of our very own board members will be familiar with, serving on the committee himself, Representative Moore Amakande, on occupational licensing. We do know that this committee has a large scope looking at occupational credentials. I would say specifically focused on whether or not new credentials are warranted, a review of existing credentials, training and education, et cetera. Certainly many of you have probably seen headlines specific to licensing. That of course is separate, but happening kind of parallel to this committee. And it is a very political moment currently. But again, similarly to the committee I just referenced, this committee is relevant for us to monitor and follow, recognizing that legislation could be developed that we would either potentially oppose or support in the next legislative session. So that committee had its first meeting earlier this month. Again, more of an organizational meeting, and the next committee meeting is scheduled for later in September, specific to that issue. And then very briefly on the federal front, the president is expected to make an announcement soon on pausing again federal student loan repayment and also student loan debt forgiveness. I think some think that that could come this week or next. So certainly, we're watching to see what the president decides and announces then. I have kept on the back of the report just an updated list on the legislative retirements. Certainly, I'm happy to provide a political update or if there are specific questions there. But certainly that's going to be the focus as we move over the next few months into November with some top tier races, as well as all of the legislative races down the ballot. So with that, I will conclude my report and take any questions.
Yeah.
I will just relay that none of the big knives came out at the August meeting. However, I fully expect them to be sharpened for September. I don't want to overstep my boundaries. However, it is a nonpartisan committee. It's a legislative. It's by LRB. They're doing the committee. However, I was being cut off. No, but when you have people with letters behind their names, agendas get involved. We'll see. I'll let you know what happens, or you can just come and view yourself.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Remy.
Thank you.
Jeff Hollow, we have a brief update on the advisory audit report, which is done quarterly. So this happens to be the month that falls in.
Good evening. The Advisory Audit Committee met on August 18th last week. Brian Kubik, Audit Manager, shared the following. Risk assessment, the 2022 report of the nation's on occupational fraud from the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners was discussed. He also mentioned that there were no changes to the audit plan for the remainder of this current fiscal year. There are no completed audits to report on. 3 action plans were completed through July 31st, with another completion prior to the meeting, bringing the total completion percentage since the May meeting to 19%. Mr. Kubik noted that 5 of 6 other management action plans were very close to completion. Results from the internal audit surveys for fiscal year 2022 were shared. The governance and leadership survey scores averaged 4.75 on a scale of 1 to 5, up 4.4 to the prior 2 years. A draft internal audit charter originally shared in 2017 was shared again with the committee. They will be asked to approve it at the next meeting. Committee's charter compliance document for fiscal year 2022 was shared, indicating that the committee had met all the requirements. This ends the audit report. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer those. Another exciting.
This was an exciting. Okay, listen, I'm just saying, I'm like, I think it's so great. It's wonderful. We're gonna move into board monitoring. So our first item under there is the annual grants report. So I'd like to call up Dr. Jennifer Mikulek. Hi.
I was able to prepare a report and send to you in advance. It's just about a 5-minute set of slides. And I just wanted to highlight a couple things in case you have questions or more discussion interest this evening. The report focused only on MATC's public funding. Last fiscal year, we had just over $5.6 million in public funding that came into the institution, and about 75% of that comes from WTCS. So I gave you some information in the slides about the details of those projects. In addition to preparing grant applications and reports last year, we also conducted a comprehensive local needs assessment where we met with advisory committee members in a focus group, employees in a focus group, and 2 student focus groups, so that we heard from our stakeholders what they'd like to see in our future projects. So I provided a little bit of an overview in the slide deck for you on what we heard from our students. For the current fiscal year, which started July 1, we have about $4.3 million committed from WTCS for projects, and those projects collectively will serve over 10,000 students during the current year. We're very happy that in the competitive categories, MATC was awarded 100% of our requests, and Dr. Martin had spoken with you about that back in the March board meeting when we got those notifications. And I provided a list of those projects, and we also are currently working on 2 other applications for about $300,000 additional from WTCS, and Dr. Nadine Gonzalez de Jesus is working with the teams to bring those resources in. I also highlighted a little bit with our federal funding, which is more limited. All of that funding is competitive, and every community college and every faculty member wants to try to get those resources. But we were successful in getting a $650,000 National Science Foundation grant that we'll be running for the next 3 years. So we're really proud of that. And then the last slide I gave you was about our federal coronavirus relief funding. We've got $67 million that came into the college to help our students and help the institution recover from COVID. So we are planning to finish up those projects and managing those funds on July 30th. And so far, close to 14,000 students have received emergency assistance through that funding. And we have a plan to make that funding available this fall and in the spring for students as well. So those are the highlights. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I saw Director Martin.
I'll yield to my.
Okay, I was just gonna say your hand up first, but.
Just very quickly, can you tell us what the scope of potential competitive projects are that the WTCS would entertain?
They have about 6 competitive grant categories, and they relate to core industries. So like the top 50 professions in the state, supporting our technical programs aligned with that. There's a competitive category related to helping with completion interests for the college. There's also a category called career pathways, where we invest in our technical programs that help offer laddered credentials for students that are in demand. There's one for developing markets, so that's for our new programs. One other category that I am forgetting. Oh, we have integrated education and training, so helping non-post-secondary students transition into post-secondary by giving them job experience and supporting that with academics to accelerate their transition into the post-secondary. And I think that covers the competitive categories.
Thank you.
Good question. Yeah.
So it says here that you have funding available through June of 2023. Are these all? These are not ARPA funds.
Some of this is
Some
ARPA.
of it
Yeah.
is. And I know that the ARPA cliff, if you will, is 2024. And so you're saying through, so like December, no, this is saying June 2023. What about?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think I can clarify. So the higher education relief portion of ARPA, which is the HERF funds, that all public and private higher education institutions have to use those funds by June 30th. The Department of Education gave everybody almost a year extension to use those funds. But the ARPA infrastructure funds that are coming into non-higher education types of entities like the county, the city, we are participating in a few of those projects as collaborators. So those will go into 2024. And I think there's one that's going into 2025 as well.
Okay. And will the remainder of 2023 be supplemented by those opportunities or those potential dollars?
Right now, it seems that people who are interested in partnering with MATC using the ARPA dollars that go beyond 2023 have already been engaged with us, and we've got those projects pretty well structured. But I suspect that organizations, as they continue to kind of work through the priorities that different, like that the city and the county and the Workforce Development Board that they're setting related to using those funds, they always regard us as a resource and as a willing partner. So I wouldn't be surprised to see more projects develop, but right now we just have 2 projects with the city.
Okay. And you said some of it is ARPA.
Correct.
How much of it is ARPA and how much of it is not?
The 67 million that I spoke about in the presentation is about half of that is derived from ARPA. So there was the CARES Act, and then there was the CARISA, and then there was ARPA. ARPA was the biggest. It basically was more than the previous 2 combined. And so most of the projects that we are managing right now in the student emergency assistance is derived from ARPA.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have now.
Okay. Any other questions related to our grants? If not, thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Item 8B is our sustainability plan. And so I'm going to call on Ginny Rossi for that.
Good evening. So yes, I'm Ginny Rothy. I'm the Director of Facilities Planning, Sustainability and Construction. I'm Laura Tenpenny, the Energy Manager. So Laura might be a new face to some of you. She started with MATC in the fall. So she's been here, I don't know, 8 months or so with us. She came from We Energies and has brought a wealth of knowledge to us. But we collaborated on putting together some materials for you in your board agenda that was essentially a summary of the sustainability plan that we've been working on in response to Dr. Martin's goals from last fiscal year. So we had some existing sustainability goals at MATC prior to that. So this was a compilation of some fragmented goals into one document. And really moving past the planning and the doing of some of these goals to getting to the checkpoint where it's been 3 years since we've done the Integrated Energy Master Plan, and it's time to reevaluate where we were at with that and incorporate it with the Climate Action Plan goals that the Sustainability Core Committee had put together in 2018. So what we presented to you was a summary of what that plan holds and a bit of an update and snapshot on where we're at currently with energy usage in the district and greenhouse gas emissions and how we're trending. I think you might have caught in the presentation that we did see a significant drop off in greenhouse gas emissions that came with the pandemic. So a lot of those move to online classes and less commuting on campus was definitely seen in the numbers and the data that we presented, which helped our goals, but we do fully expect a bounce back once the pandemic levels out. So we are here to answer any questions that might come from the report that we presented.
Thank you for the video. Yes, thank you for that. I do know in this case that, not just because I expected you to, but I did have some advanced notice on this. So Director Foley.
I have a few. I guess I could do this by slide. It might be the fastest way to do it. On the integrated energy multi-year plan, the reference to creating a 10-year capital replacement plan. That's something we did before, right? And we are ongoing. Where are we in that plan now?
So that's a plan that we put together in 2018. We titled it the Integrated Energy Multi-Year Plan. At that point, 10-year plan was what it was. So it's in summary, a deferred maintenance plan that takes our sustainability goals and our carbon goals and really does a both and assessment of decisions that need to take place in terms of facilities turnover, particularly in the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing areas. So we're 3 years into that, and that's part of what we were evaluating with this, bringing it together with the Climate Action Plan areas, is to evaluate how we were doing and how we were spending according to what we had planned and our aspirations and where we're at today. So I don't know, Laura, if you want to give a snapshot on how we've been trending on that IEMP.
Yeah, it's so far we've been following fairly well with it. Sometimes we do have to change out what projects we want to do just due to emergencies or aging equipment needing attention sooner rather than later. So we've had to readjust some of our plans. So we do have an adjusted outlook for that 10 years just to keep hitting all of our maintenance for all of our HVAC equipment and different items that need to be addressed for that. And we're looking to see, like Janice said, to really pair our energy efficiency with it, with all decisions that we make, not think inside the box, think outside the box. So I think in the presentation, we kind of showed what we're doing on the energy side of it. So a lot of that does contribute to some of these projects that we've done and implement.
Does the recent uptick in inflation, supply chain problems, et cetera, suggest that we need to change those plans looking forward?
That is such a good question. Yeah, we're really getting pinched on the construction side and the equipment side with the cost increases that we've seen year over year. We did receive the latest report from the DMI, District Mutuals Insurance Group, this past month that did highlight a year over year increase in construction costs of about 20%. That is in alignment with what we've seen in increased bidding and the material shortages that we've been experiencing. The year prior, it was about a 12% increase year over year. So yeah, we are still seeing significant increases in costs of goods and materials. So it is an excellent question how long this will stick. If it's here to stay or if it will course correct. Lumber course corrected this past year, a few months ago, I should say. Yeah.
So one of the things I encourage you to look at and report back to us is these are all interrelated moving targets, right? So the cost of things are going up and down. The cost of what we're paying for, that is energy, has also gone up, which means that it may make sense to invest more dollars up front now to recoup it faster than before. Maybe that all these things offset each other. I don't know, but I just encourage you to look at that. Since you're from We Energies, this is an appropriate question for you. What is their plan for continuation of steam generation at the Valley Power Plant?
So we did reach out. We're waiting for some response there.
You didn't pick up the phone and say, Gail, what's going on?
I don't have that high of connection, but we did reach out to our account manager to see what he can find out for us for the plans, because we do care about what they're doing in terms of carbon neutrality as well. They do have some goals for their electric generation. It's not quite clear how that's going to affect steam or not. I do know there's quite a few customers down here in the Milwaukee area that are on that steam, so it would have to be a long-term plan if anything would change. So there's been no word there as to what they're planning to do for that plant. I know it's already been converted to natural gas. What the next steps are, I'm not quite sure yet.
Okay, because that is listed here. Adds our 3 timelines, added steam to electrified heating for downtown, and I don't know any inside information, but I have serious doubts about whether that's going to be there long term.
So part of the reason for that is our infrastructure here, for instance, our M building is over 100 years old. So the steam infrastructure has to be replaced. And in the integrated energy multi-year plan, they were looking what our options are, and the best option for us for a variety of reasons, flexibility, safety, comfort of spaces, going to a hot water system versus an actual steam distribution system is recommended. That also allows us, if you have a hot water system, to heat the building. How you make that hot water gives you a lot of options. You could stay on steam if you really wanted to. You could switch to a natural gas boiler, or we can electrify. Electrification does give us the best option for our climate goals because we can use renewable electric energy. Right now, we don't have a lot of options for getting renewable natural gas in our system. So it does allow us to help reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And when we do want to convert over to 100% renewable electric, that will give us the opportunity to do so.
On the renewables on-site slide, you've got a number of numbers here, and I'm just wondering what percentage of each campus's electrical needs are currently being met by what we have done, and did the projects produce as much as we anticipated?
So I will try to answer that as best as I can. I did look quickly to try to get you a number. I think roughly if you combine all of our electric usage for all of our campuses and then look at all of our renewable energy, right now we're only about 6%. Mequon and Oak Creek do have periods, especially on weekends or lighter summer days where it's not extremely hot and a high load. They do completely offset during the day. The biggest difficulty is how we can get solar connected. So we talk about net metering in our presentation. We're very limited because we have regulations here in the state and how much we can connect when it comes to connecting up with utilities. So I think roughly we can only put about 300 kW system per meter for this net metering. So we are quite limited. At times we do completely produce for a few hours of the day. Sometimes we overproduce, and the net metering does allow us to kind of bank up that production to offset others, but we can't put a very large system in there to completely offset. So we are limited, but that's our first target because it's the most cost-effective revenue generating for us.
I guess this might be a question for somebody else now, and I'm not sure who, maybe it was Laura, but are we doing anything to lobby the Public Service Commission or the state legislature to change those rules that limit that, at least for municipal organizations, which would be saving the state money?
We have been active with Renew Wisconsin, which is a nonprofit organization that is working to promote renewables in the state. We have several partners here in the city that we've talked about these partners before that have strong sustainability goals: the city of Milwaukee, Milwaukee County, UWM, Marquette, and the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District. So we've worked with them in partnerships to lobby the PSC with Renew Wisconsin's help, particularly by that group intervening on some rate cases and some different items that have gone before the Public Service Commission. We certainly do have an energy advisor that advises us of what's in front of the Public Service Commission and what we might want to intervene on to say this would be good for MATC as well.
Is this something the PSC can do on their own, or do they need a change in legislation in order to reduce or eliminate these kinds of limits, do you know?
It's a combination. Yes, it depends on the particular item you're talking about. But yes, the net metering limit is state legislation.
Okay, but that only applies to electrical energy that you're generating and want to add back into the system, right?
Right.
So you could achieve higher sustainability beyond whatever those limits are by having solar power generating systems that are not adding to the net metering total, but simply powering, say, external lights or some other functionality on the campus, right?
Correct. That's correct.
Okay, and are we moving to do more of that given these limits?
We do have the option. I think those are great things to look at. The largest consumer is going to be our HVAC systems, where it gets kind of difficult to do that. I know that you mentioned maybe doing solar lights for the parking lots. Those are great ideas to do, especially when you get to LEDs. They don't need as much power. So they would be something we should look at. But it is very difficult. We're limited to what we can do. Our HVAC systems are going to use much more power than the solar can currently offset on site. There are other options, and that's where we talked about the strategies as to what we're looking at first. For net metering is what we want to do as our first target. It's the best option. We could put a solar field out and sell directly back to the utility. It's a very small rate. It's not as fiscally responsible. Those are options. We also talked about some virtual power purchase agreements and other options down the line as well.
Okay, renewable strategies slide. Go there.
Mm-hmm.
I am getting to the end here.
It's all right.
Thank you for your indulgence.
You're teaching me, thanks.
I'm learning a lot.
So on the net metering, you just said it's more fiscally responsible to do that. How much more of that, however you want to quantify, can we do at this point?
So we would have to dig into each campus, and some of it's going to be location right downtown. We don't have as much space to physically put a solar array that could connect. So it's, from my understanding, it's on a per meter basis. So every account we have a meter with We Energy. So I think MacWan has one main account. I think Oak Creek has two, or vice versa. So we do have some additional ones that we could look at doing. Downtown would be very tricky. I'm not saying that we can't do anything. Net metering, when you talked about how much more cost effective it is. So think of it as we're offsetting the rate we pay We Energies for our usage. Say it's 8 cents, 10 cents. Whereas if we're paying back, or the utilities paying us directly, it's anywhere from 2 to 4 cents. It fluctuates. So it is a huge difference in what we're revenue generating in that sense. So if we can do it, it's ideal.
Can you split MacWan into 2 meters?
It's a great question. There's potential routes that we could look into, but then again, the cost to split the meter versus implementation of that, there might be other options that, or if we make changes in the legislation that we can do different rates and put in solar differently than just the net metering, we could have other options that are more viable.
I will say, when I worked in California, the net metering limit is 1 megawatt in California, and it's 300 kilowatts here. So there's room for growth in Wisconsin.
Item 2 on this slide is reserving a minimum of 1/2 megawatt of solar production to address organizational environmental justice responsibilities and support student need, revenue to support student emergency grants. How does that work? Is this, I mean, we had a project we were talking about investing in, I think it was related to Foxconn a few years ago, where we would invest a certain amount into helping to pay for the creation of the solar system. They would sell the electricity, we would get a credit against it. Is that what we're talking about here?
It's similar, but we're talking about putting something on MATC property that solar that we would put on our property in partnership with UWM that could offset student emergency grants as a direct loop into an environmental justice initiative for the college.
How is that connected to UWM?
Well, we have a lot of partnerships and students with the M-Cubed initiative. We have a lot of the same students that travel through the K-12 system in Milwaukee through MATC and on to UWM. We have some shared land that MATC owns and UWM leases that has space.
Where's that?
It's at our Blue Hole site, which is the TV transmission site. We've had some negative solar that's been there in the past because it's been underneath some TV towers for ice shedding, but we've been working on identifying land that is well away from those TV towers that could be a potential location. So this is something that's in conversation with UWM right now. It's gained a lot of interest from the different student experience offices, et cetera.
Okay, again, it sounds like this is pretty early in the development stage, but I just wonder, given the announcement from last Friday, whether any revenue generated by this should be put to student emergency grants on one hand, which is what you have here, or if it should be used to accelerate, given the budgetary issues we talked about a few minutes ago, to accelerate the move into renewables and sustainability so that we can capture more sooner.
This one might be one for Jeff a little more because it deals with transference of funds, money between funds at MATC. So Jeff, I don't know if you want to address that at all.
So you're talking about increase our investment, and I think from your questions, you mentioned something about taking FCC funds.
Well, that's a different question.
Different question.
That's a different question. Yeah, this is just, if we're going to create solar production in order to essentially sell it, the question is what happens to the revenue? And the first is, well, you pay for the solar installation, right? But after a certain point, you got a return of 100% on investment. And now the question is, where does that money go? And I think that's what this parenthetical is suggesting, is that we go into student emergency grants. When we get to this point, it's too soon now. We should talk about, I think, whether we really need more money there, or if it makes more sense to return that money to more such investments and maximize the amount of cash flow we're generating.
So that would go, if we were to do something like that, that's called an enterprise operation, and that would be the Fund 5. So it'd be, we're trying to earn a profit, like our parking ramp and other activities that we have that are in the business of, breaking even or generating a profit. So what we would do is, once it was, so we say we invest in this operation and we have a return, and now we have a positive cash flow. We could take that and move it from that fund to another fund, but there's also, there's penalties. So if we move that to Fund 5 to Fund 1, we get penalized, we lose state aid. And so there's pluses and minuses.
Okay.
But we could think of different.
Let's look at it when the time comes. Okay. But who pays for the utilities at our new student housing?
That's fund. That's FCC fund. It funds it for the first 2 years.
Okay.
We're paying for the utilities for the students, and then after that, it'll be part of the student rent.
Okay, but the question then becomes: is there some way to leverage what we're doing here to offset or cover whatever those utility costs are, so they don't become an added burden?
So one of the things, we have a 7-year lease or a 5-year lease with student housing. 7 years. So we don't own. So putting infrastructure in there, and we have a 7-year lease, and then we renew it. I mean, it's basically giving them the infrastructure. So I don't know if that long term it doesn't make sense.
Not if you lease it to them. Lease it back. What are virtual power purchase agreements?
It's essentially a financial arrangement. So the word virtual is put in there because you're arranging to get more, in this case, renewables put into your mix of electricity that you want to be receiving, but it's not the actual renewable electrons that you're receiving. You're still keeping the same arrangement and receiving your electricity from your current supplier, in our case, We Energies, at the same rates that the state PSC sets. What it is an ability to work with a developer, often with a group and a conglomerate of other organizations that are also looking for renewable energies. You work out a price arrangement with this developer that you would be agreeing to for this electric energy, and you essentially received the renewable energy credits, and it's a contract for differences essentially. So the price that you agree on with the developer, what the solar or wind site actually sells back to the market, that difference in price is what you typically see back as a revenue from the arrangement. Sometimes it is a cost in extreme situations. But that's why it's called virtual power purchase agreement. So you
Okay.
get the renewable energy credits.
And then a strategy of purchasing renewable energy credits. So many of these have been fraudulent, to use a word, I think appropriate word. I don't know. I don't know that we really want to do this, because what this does is it says, okay, there's somebody out there who's got a section of the Amazon forest that they're promising not to cut down, and we are going to take credit because we're going to preserve that somehow, or pay to own it and preserve it. But that already exists. And so maybe we're helping the world by doing this. But if we find a way to actually reduce our own usage, we're definitely helping the world. Okay, so
yep.
I would rather spend more money on more of these other kinds of projects than to say, oh gosh, we're being good citizens because we are preserving that 1 acre in somewhere else.
In response, that's why we've got that at the bottom of the list. That's the last of the strategies. The first strategies are definitely reducing as much energy as we can. We have very ambitious goals here at MATC to reduce our usage by 50%. We're on a great trend towards that goal as well. In response to your skepticism about these projects and their verifiability, there are certifying bodies. I would say 25 years ago that was the case. There were a lot of stories that hit the news about questioning the verifiability of these projects. Since then, there have been several certifying bodies that have been put in place. That's what they do, is publicly certify these projects. And there are a number of corporations that do this VPPA strategy to get to 100%. Number of large banks, a lot of the big names that you'll recognize, from Google to Target to a lot of large corporations are using the VPPA strategy. So there are bodies out there that they use certified products and work with advisors to make sure it puts what's called additionality onto the market, so that the projects that are built actually are new projects that do reduce emissions. They're often, as I mentioned, new solar fields that go in that add to the grid, sell back to the grid, or new wind that adds to the grid. So it's not an untried market. Certainly the past 10, 15 years, this really has taken off. There are a number of higher education institutions, including UWM, UW-Madison. We have some partners here in the state, in Western Technical College and Madison College, and the tech colleges too, that are also trying to pursue some VPPAs. So yes, we hear you. We'll talk as administration. Yes, but we would be consulting with consultants and working with bodies that are known products that are out there.
Last question. You're going to cut student and faculty commuting by 40%. How?
I can try. So it's gonna be a variety of ways to do so. So that's the emissions. It's not necessarily reducing their commuting, right? So if we can, one strategy is, can we do better scheduling so students don't have to travel 5 days a week for their classes? Is there a better way that we can schedule to get them here so they're only here 3 days? That right there cuts 2 days off your commuting. If we can help push to do buses, walking, ride shares, that will help reduce our commuting emissions. If we can help support going to electric vehicles, and then we can offset by using electric or renewable energy, that also will help. We've already implemented, just due to the pandemic, the flexible work arrangements. And that's another way to help reduce faculty and staff commuting as well. So there are some different strategies, and I think that'll also be a moving target as we have new ideas and things that work, don't work, to work towards that.
The Wisconsin Department of Transportation just submitted its proposal for creating a system of automobile, electric vehicle recharging stations along the interstates and the major US highways in the state for federal funding. That's intended to be implemented in 2023 through 2024. The 2024 through 25 plan that's under development now is a secondary plan that will seek to supplement those on the interstate kinds of stations. They want to put them every 25 miles or every 50 miles. The second step is going to be to put charging facilities in places that are destinations. We are a destination, both because we're downtown and because we're a college, et cetera. So just something to be aware of, and that I hope to follow up with them is there a way to get one of those built here? Now we've got, I think, 3 individual 1 car at a time chargers, electric chargers on this campus. I don't know if we have any in the others.
We have some at Mequon and Oak Creek as well.
Okay. But it seems to me we ought to be looking at a way to do that in a way that we're not paying for the electricity, but perhaps providing some land and some access points to make it work. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very informative.
Yes.
Yeah, that was awesome. So many questions have emerged just from that. And so we'll probably meet together one-on-one. I had a 2-part question, and somebody let me know if I'm getting off track or off topic at all. But are there opportunities for us to talk about, when we're talking about renewable energy, are there opportunities for us to have a conversation about the industries that will require us to do some of that work and the instruction that happens here at MATC to prepare our students to get into those industries?
We would love that conversation.
Yes.
There's much growth we can do on the academic side.
Because I was at Chippewa Valley Technical College last month, up in Eau Claire, and they have the Energy Education Center there, and I'm like, hey, this is where it's at. The other part of my question is for the We Energies, have we updated our plan to close our coal-fired plants in the next 10 years?
So that is part of it too. It sounds like We Energies is looking to eliminate coal, I think by 2035, if I'm correct.
Okay.
They do have some online, they have some, I think it's 60% reduction in CO2 by 2025 for their electric, and then 80% by 2030. A lot of their goals are for 2050 as well for their carbon neutrality. So back to your comment about the renewable energy credits, I don't think we're going to be able to completely avoid them, especially as it takes time for others to maybe catch up. We're quite aggressive on our goals for 2030 being carbon neutral. A lot of others are maybe targeting 2050. So if we're still on steam and natural gas, if the utility is not completely carbon neutral, we're going to have to do what we can to offset that. So there's going to be some unavoidable renewable energy credits we may have to purchase, but it is obviously the main goal is to reduce what we can. And if we can do as much solar, wind, renewable electric, that will remove a lot of our emissions right there.
Cool, thanks. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to say that I love the way that you guys nerded out to every question that he asked. Like, great question. I've been waiting to answer this.
I thought you were going to comment on the polka dots. We did not.
Oh.
We didn't plan the polka dots.
Oh, no. Well,
You got them.
But I don't have the knowledge that you ladies have.
It's very informative.
Oh, that was great.
It was.
Yeah.
I'm gonna thank all of you. I was ready to say thank you. He's like, no, I have a bunch of questions. Let's bring up the spread.
I appreciate them sending early so we could make sure we try to address them for you.
We're talking about the future.
Yes.
And this is what the future is gonna be. And he goes back, and I don't want to topic here, but he goes, I'm in the auto industry and going into the mechanic side, we're gonna have to really pair that along with that.
Yeah.
As that takes off, then that needs to adjust as well. Because yes, right now, yeah, we need a lot of mechanics, but that is you're gonna go from having, I don't know, 250 pieces on a vehicle to maybe like 25 pieces on a vehicle, but everything else is gonna be just technology on it. That's another thing that we really need to kind of figure out with all of this planning. We need to be the guidance of, okay, where is this going? Monitor really closely, and then from there pivot and adjust as it moves forward. Because we're talking about 2030, that is gonna be here before you know it.
The group here that does training for auto technicians has been talking to Tesla and Volkswagen and I want to say Ford or General Motors for 2 or 3 years now about this. And I haven't talked to them about it recently, but essentially what they were told by Tesla was teach them about electricity. Don't try to teach them how to maintain our cars. That they would want to do that. And so I think this is going to be another one of those situations where there's like we did with the science courses when we were doing guided pathways, where we said, well, we used to have an introductory course for science for nurses and science for this and science for that. And then if somebody, after they took that course, said, well, I want to move to something else, they couldn't transfer the credits. And so we created a basic science for everybody course. I'm generalizing here, obviously. I think we're going to have to do something like that because we're also going to need a lot of people to install these systems and to maintain the system, not just the devices using the electricity afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, because it's going to take, 2 pieces. The pieces that you need to kind of service the vehicle, but you need to have the knowledge about the electronics and the other pieces that are going to go along with it. But that is going to be driven by precisely that, the infrastructure, how fast we're going to get it up and running, and how fast we're going to get these vehicles out in people's hands on a economical way possible. So, great work, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, give them a clap because. There you go.
We have one more board monitoring report, and it is our quarterly OPEB and FCC trust report. Another exciting report.
I believe you have these at your table. So. That's at the table.
Yeah, I think.
Table, or we can look at it on the screen. So I'll keep this rather brief, but one of the things that's pretty interesting is if you remember back, those of you who remember back in 2017, in October of 2017, we received $84.9 million from the FCC Trust for the trust fund. And if we look at the first page, which has the FCC Trust information, if you look at the right hand, I found this very interesting, in the lower right hand corner. If we look at since inception, we had $84.9 million that we had for beginning market value. And you look at the beginning of the quarter, we had at the beginning of this quarter, back in March of this year, we had 112. And if we go back a little further, the last 6 months have been really difficult for investments. So if we go back to December, that 112 was probably 118. And now the ending market value at the end of June is $99.5 million. And the other thing is that the disbursements, the amount that we've spent on projects is about little over $12 million. And the decline in the last 3 months was $12.5 million. So we had significant declines, but if we look at where we started and where we are, we're still significantly ahead. And I just wanted to share that with you. The other information, the asset allocation, we can see that on the other side. We know domestic, we have a high percentage of domestic equity investments, 36%. We know that really got hit hard in the last 6 months. And one of the things I would like to show you on the right-hand quadrant there is that right now the blended benchmarks, that's what we measure the performance of the trust against. they're actually performing slightly better than our advisors. So that's, to me, they were performing better, but now we're seeing the benchmarks are slightly better or slightly less worse, I guess. So I just pause there to see if there's any questions you may have with regard to this, the FCC trust. Okay. Then the next page is the Opeb Trust, and this is, I won't spend as much time, but it's the beginning market value since inception is 30.4 million, and we're about $42.5 million. And we do not take money out of this trust. The only money that goes out is if we have to pay investment advisor fees, which you can see is a smaller amount. So I'll just pause if there's any questions. Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jeff. Item 9 is new business. Dr. Bullock.
Just one thing, I want to thank, I'm not sure if it's Beth or Gwen or both, who put together this calendar of
And that was going to
events.
be, yep. That was going to be under my announcement, so you beat me to it.
And I haven't read it to make sure this would be okay. Somebody needs to, but I would suggest this be put on the website on the same page where we keep our agendas in board minutes, so that others can look forward and so that I don't have to keep track of this piece of paper. for more than another 5 minutes.
There's a real reason. I guess just in terms of if there's anything confidential or something the public couldn't see. So otherwise, I agree with you. It is great, and we were talking about that. So and it's been an ask that you've had too. So yes, very much appreciated. Any other new business? If not, we will move into our future events and announcements. And right now, the only thing that we have is our next monthly board meeting, the end of September, the 27th. It's on here, and you could look at this new document if you wanted to get a preview of what will be on that agenda. So we can already take a look at that. So other than that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. A second. Thank you. So it's Director Mays and second by Director Burris to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I always feel like I have to say opposed, but really I do.